Hi everyone, and welcome back to Granite Garden Cottage. In today's video we are going to be pressure canning some of the beef that we got in our bulk beef order that did not fit in the freezers. I know that there's been some anticipation for the follow-up video to see how much we ended up taking home from our bulk beef order and how much the take-home cost per pound was. We're going to get into all of that in this video. I have never pressure canned anything in my entire life. So I did actually have to purchase a pressure canner for this venture, but it's something I've had on my to-do list for a long time, so this kind of just pushed me into the direction of having to do that because we just simply do not have the space in our freezers. So this is the Presto electric pressure canner. It's still in the box. I literally just bought this for this endeavor. Obviously we'll be using it for a lot more, but this is my first time using a pressure canner. I went with the electric pressure canner because I've never pressure canned anything before, and this walks you through step by step, so it makes it very easy for beginner canners. And also I wanted the aspect that it's a little bit quieter, supposedly, according to the reviews that I was finding. This is much quieter than a traditional pressure canner, and you don't necessarily need to babysit it on the stovetop like you would with a stovetop pressure canner. So those are some of the reasons why I decided to go with the electric pressure canner. I do have a baby, and so quiet is a big deal in our house. If it was super loud, I'm not sure how often I would be able to have this running in the background while my child is sleeping. So that is a big driver as to why I decided to go with the electric pressure canner. So let's get this baby unboxed, and I'm gonna read the directions and try to figure out how it works. Okay guys, this thing is a doozy. It's really big. Let me see if I can show you so you can appreciate how big this canner is. I'm not sure I can even get this into frame where it's sitting right now, but it's really big. Let's see. Oh, this is the size of it. This is the 17 quart Presto electric pressure canner. I'm realizing that I kind of set myself up improperly because I put all of my jars and lids over here, but that's actually where the pressure canner needs to go. So I'm gonna have to move all of those things over so I have space on the countertop for this big item. Okay guys, so as you can see, I moved the pressure canner over to the counter. I did clean the recommended parts to clean before starting this process, so that is done. I did move my jars up to the island, and I pulled out all of the beef that I will be canning. I did weigh this just for fun. Oh, this is our meat. This meat that I'm canning is 22.6 pounds. So we're canning 22.6 pounds of beef today, and I'm doing pint-sized jars. We're a small family, so pint-sized jars is an appropriate size for us. If we end up needing more, I can open 2 cans, but I don't want to can in quart sizes, not use it all, and then kind of either have it go to waste or stress about finishing what's left in the can before it goes bad. So pint sizes were what I settled on for this, and I have no idea how many pint jars 22.6 pounds of beef is going to fill. So we're going to find out together. I do have to cut up some of these larger cuts of beef. I did pull out the tougher cuts to pressure can so that they will be nice and tender when we go to open up the jars. So I did pull out flank steak. I pulled out top round steaks, stew beef, sandwich steaks, and I think that's it. Yeah, so there's 3 top round steaks, which look like this, and they're about this size. 1 flank steak, and then the rest are small packages of stew beef and sandwich steak. So I'm going to cut up the larger portions here into like inch-ish size cubes, and then I will start this process. The pressure canner does recommend warming the jars first, even if you're cold packing, which I am going to be cold packing this beef today. So actually what I think I will do is put these jars, I'll set the canner up with the 3 quarts of water that it requires. Put in the jars. It recommends filling the jars with some water and then putting it on a warm cycle. So I'm going to get that done first, and that way once these are done warming, they're ready to throw in the salt and the beef. So that is, I guess, while that's warming, I'll cut up the beef. Okay, so I have filled the canner with the pre-designated amount of water and a couple tablespoons of white vinegar to prevent staining on the outsides of the jars from hard water. We do have a water softener, but I figured it doesn't hurt to throw a couple tablespoons of white vinegar in just to be sure that the jars don't end up really gross looking. Not a requirement, but just a preference. So now I'm going to fill up these jars halfway full with warm water, and I'm going to start the warming setting on this product, on this pressure canner. Okay friends, you can see I have 7 jars on the bottom and 6 on top. That is the maximum capacity for this 17 quart canner. Okay friends, so I did go ahead and start the warming process. I just hit the start button and it changed from insert jars to warm. So I think this is going to take about 20 minutes based on the instruction manual. So during this 20 minutes, I'm going to cut up the larger chunks of beef and get those ready for canning. I'll pull my salt out in my 1/2 teaspoon measuring spoon, and I think I'm going to be ready to fill these jars once they're done warming. Fingers crossed that so far I'm doing everything correctly. I am following the instruction manual step by step, so here's to hoping. Let's talk about the bulk beef order that we got from the farm and talk about the hanging weight versus the take-home packaged weight. So I know I discussed before that the hanging weight is the weight of the animal after it's been butchered, and the hide, hooves, internal organs, the head have all been removed, and they hang it up to age it. So that initial hanging weight is the weight that you start with, and that's the weight that you're paying by. So I'm paying, if it's a hanging weight of 466 pounds, that's what I'm paying the farmer. So then the butchering process will take place after the, I need a pair of scissors, 1 second. So after the aging process has taken place, the butcher will then butcher out all the individual cuts. These scissors are awful. These are medical scissors. I'm probably not being wise about that. Oh, my other scissors. Kitchen scissors. Okay. Sorry. So once again, try this again. So once the butcher does butcher out that animal after it's had an opportunity to age, hang and age for a designated amount of time, and the cuts are butchered out, that's what you end up taking home for weight, and you end up losing like 30 to 40% from the initial hanging weight to the packaged butchered weight. And a lot of that weight is actually water weight that the animal loses. It evaporates during the hanging aging process that takes place over usually like a few days or like a week or two. I don't really know. I think it depends on the situation, the farmer, but definitely a few days. And then once they, trash here. Once they butcher that out, they're also losing some weight in bones and fat and sinew and parts that aren't usable. So that's where you're losing that 30 to 40% from hanging weight to take home weight. So we had a hanging weight, like I've said a few times, of 466 pounds. We paid $6.25 per pound for that order. We ended up taking home, let me double check my notes, 318 pounds, or 318.4 pounds. So after doing the math, that is 68.3% of the hanging weight. So that's pretty good, actually. We were happy with that number. Also, the farmer gave me 5 pounds of suet, which is beef fat that has not been rendered down. I did ask her, you know, if I could include that in the order, and she added that in at no cost. It wasn't originally part of the order that I had selected, but she was nice enough to throw in that 5 pounds for me at no additional cost. So that's not including the cost of that, you know, the free suet. So 318 pounds to take home. Like I said, 68.3% take home from the hanging weight. So again, very happy with that. And when you calculate out the cost per pound at the 318.4 pounds of the packaged weight we brought home, it ends up being $9.15 per pound. So obviously that sounds really good, and it is really good. Do keep in mind that that is the cost for all of the cuts. It's not designating like the steaks were this much and the ground beef was that much. All of it on average was $9.15 a pound. So when I think of it that way, I think that's really good because in my area, I do live in New England and things are very expensive here. So in my area, ground beef is usually, I can get it as cheap as $6 a pound, and that's for grass-fed organic beef. And that's the cheapest I can find, and that's only one store that sells it that cheap. The rest of the stores sell it for closer to like $7 or $8 a pound. So, but the cheapest I can find it is that $5.99 or $6 a pound. So, you know, obviously the $9.15 a pound is more than that when when you think of it that way. However, when I buy steaks that are grass-fed at my local grocery store, that is actually closer to like anywhere from $17 to like $25 a pound, thereabouts. So that's obviously much more expensive than the $9.15 a pound that we paid for our grass-fed local beef. So I do think that it's worthwhile. Sorry, I'll get back in the frame. I do think that it's worthwhile to order this way from the local farm. It's a huge upfront cost, and like I said, we're very fortunate to be able to afford that upfront cost. Not everybody has that luxury or that privilege, so I do feel very fortunate that that is an option in front of us. And in the long run, for us, in our area, it does save us money to do things that way. If I were to compare this cost to the cheapest beef available in the grocery store, I would not be saving money. The only way that this is saving money is when you compare it to an equal product, which is like a grass-fed beef at the grocery store. Otherwise, like I said, this isn't going to look like it's saving any money at all. So if you don't buy grass-fed, you don't really care about grass-fed, and you're just buying the less expensive cuts of meat at the grocery store, no judgment, because meat is so expensive right now. I totally get it. You know, if you're just buying whatever the regular standard available beef at the store is. But if you were to compare this cost to that, I would argue that this is not going to save you any money. And here's the other thing I think that's important to note. I think it's fun to look at the financials, and I think it's informative to look at the financials. And, you know, my brain kind of works that way, so I like doing that. But that's really not like the whole reason why we do things this way. Buying local is so good for so many reasons, and saving money is not the primary reason that we are buying our beef locally from a farm. It's one reason, but it's not all of the reasons. So for us, it's contributing to the local economy. We are supporting local farmers. We're supporting local butchers. We are investing in a product that has not been shipped across the country or across the world, which is really important to us. It's good for the environment, better for the environment, I should say, than buying something that's been shipped quite a large distance across the country or across the world. And then also, you know, the animal itself it's taken care of much better than a commercial operation would be caring for their animals. I know that these cows have had access to pasture, and they have been just really well cared for from the butcher, or from the farmer rather. So for me, that's a factor as well. This is what I call happy meat. These cows are really happy during their lifetime, and for me, that's important. If I'm going to be eating meat, I really would like to eat something where the animal is not suffering if I can help it. So those are the reasons why we bought our beef in bulk locally. And again, you know, if you're not able to do it, you're not able to do it. I totally get it. You have to do what's right or what makes sense for you and your household. But for us, it is worthwhile when I think of it that way. The financials is only one part of the equation. So I am also removing the large fat caps or fat pieces on these steaks, and that is just recommended when I read the recipe, and I'm assuming that's just because when you're pressure canning or canning in general, you don't want an excess of fat in your canned products because it can prevent the seal, and it can interfere with the final product sealing properly and staying sealed. So that is the beef to say that the jars are warm, so I'm going to try to hurry up and get the rest of this cut here. Okay, friends, the baby is in the kitchen, so we may hear the baby in the background, but this is the beef that I have cut up, the top round and the flank steak. Everything else is already pre-cut from the butcher, like this sandwich steak and this stew beef. And then I have 2 packages of a stew beef that I bought at a grocery store that I needed to get out of the freezer to make room for the farm meat. But what I find very interesting is if you compare these 2 meats, this one's so much darker. I don't know if you can even appreciate that in this video, but this is a very light colored pink, and this is like a dark ruby red. They're both grass-fed, but it's just interesting to see the color disparity in something that was mass commercially produced and something that is local and from directly from a farm. So. I just need to discard this water.
Do turkeys, Gary, please?
I've added a half a teaspoon of salt in these warm jars, and I have packed them with the beef I cut up, and there's an inch of headspace here. So I'm going to do that with all of these jars, and then we will see what the next steps are. I did pack the 7 jars on the bottom, 6 on top, kind of alternating, sitting not directly on top, but on the 2 edges of the other jars. Okay friends, so this is the first batch that has been pressure canned and cooled. It has finished. I did turn the cycle off, but what we're waiting for right now is this little pressure gauge to go back down. It will sink back down when the pressure has reduced sufficiently in the machine. So once this goes down, once I notice that it's flat, I'll be able to remove the lid and set the jars aside, and then I will reset everything to do the second batch. Okay, so this pressure gauge has finally gone all the way down, so we can take the lid off. We'll take this batch out and place it on this towel. It will stay there undisturbed for about 12 to 24 hours before I can put it downstairs in the pantry. And I will allow this to fully cool and change the water to cool water because I currently have the next batch in the fridge. So I want to start everything cold so that we have a even temperature as we heat things up. You don't want to put cold jars in a hot canner because of course they can break. So let's get this done. So I'm observing that these jars are still bubbling pretty ferociously. So that indicates that they are still too hot to be moving them out of the canner. So I'm gonna leave the canner alone with the lid off for a while to hopefully prevent that from siphoning. I don't want all of this beautiful meat to siphon. So I'm just gonna give it like 10 minutes and then come back to it. Good morning, friends. It's the next day and I just wanted to wrap up this video by showing you how many jars we ended up with. We finished up late last night, so I figured I would film this part this morning. So as you can see here, this is the finished product. Maybe not the prettiest product that you'll have in your pantry shelves, but I'm really impressed and pleased with how these turned out. So the final tally here is 23 pints and 1/2, so 23.5 pints. We didn't have enough to fill a whole pint here, so I ended up just putting what I did have in this 1/2 pint jar. And then to make a full second batch in the canner, I did just throw in a couple of pints of bone broth that needed to be managed. So I figured why not just throw those in to make a complete full cycle so we're not wasting the electricity. Excuse the baby in the background. So this beef will be really handy on days that we're just like, yeah, bud. But we're just really busy. This will work nicely in like steak sandwiches or tacos or all kinds of goodies. So thank you so much for coming along with me today as I canned beef for the first time ever and introduction to my brand new pressure canner. I do love this machine. I think that it has been a really great experience. It made things very easy for me as a first time pressure canner. So I'm excited to see what else I can get up to with canning. Thanks so much, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye!